Every time Steam Next Fest rolls on through, it's a great opportunity to see what's been cooking and get a taste of the good, the bad, and the bizarre. We've spent the last week playing way too many demos, and there's a surprising amount of interesting stuff out there this time, so here's 21 of the best and weirdest picks from the latest Steam Next Fest.
Two-headed hero.
Unguard is a great action platformer reminiscent of the PS2 days. Pick up the sword of Adalia de Volante and team up with the mysterious El Vigilante to fight an evil Count Duke across a Spanish fantasy city inspired by the likes of Zorro, Princess Bride, and other excellent swashbuckling films. It's got easy and intuitive controls, a great sense of humor, and actually really good production value. There's a tight parry system in the action combat that really makes it feel like fencing. Great action movie moments where you're kicking barrels, knocking bad guys into water, throwing buckets on their heads, blowing up things with cannons. It's excellent. There's even an arena mode that lets you play around with some of the more fun combat options from later in the game if you're down for a challenge. I've got to say, this was a really fun surprise. It left me hungry for more, and if that didn't sell you, you can pet the chickens. Alien Hominid Invasion is a co-op shooter about an alien invasion, but you're the aliens. The FBI is doing everything in its power to stop you, but due to their disregard for the ice creams of the working class, you have allies in these simple factory workers. This one's a follow-up to the original Alien Hominid game, and that came out all the way back in 2002. It shares the same simple art style with awesome animation and sound design in classic Behemoth style. It's silly, the controls are tight, the game feels great to play, there's a brilliant OST, and there's also a bunch of mystifying unlocks as well as tiered loot systems that dramatically change how your character plays. On top of that, it's really satisfying to blow through a level and get like 1,000,000 points at the end and just watch numbers go up. It's reminiscent somewhat of arcade shooters like Contra or Metal Slug, but a lot more fun and a lot less punishing. In Testament, the Order of High Human, you play as a fallen king in this somewhat Viking-feeling first-person fantasy adventure. This isn't really going for a Skyrim feel, although there is some loot to be found and XP to collect. It's more of a character action game like God of War or Dark Messiah of Might and Magic. It's got some neat designs and pretty good production value, including some passable voiceover and some adorable localization.
Can't run away.
What?
Got my loot!
There's a spooky, silly vampire named Arva who appears to be your brother, and he's up to some mischief.
Why must I repel darkness when I can embrace it?
As well as this really endearing nature monster that chases you through most of the demo. Most of the time you'll be fighting these cool little halfling guys with your sword or your bow, and as well as some magic spells and abilities. The melee does feel like it could use some more impact and the stealth is rather simplistic, but overall if you're looking for a first-person horror RPG, you could do a lot worse, and this is definitely one to watch if the devs tune up a couple of the rough edges. Now we move on to the realm of space. Star Siege Dead Zone is one of the latest in a new wave of extraction shooters inspired by the likes of Tarkov and that one COD mode that sometimes people like. As far as the gameplay goes, if you've never played an extraction shooter, the idea is you go in there with some friends, you loot, you shoot some NPCs, you shoot some other squads, you grab some loot, you loot some more, you avoid the danger zone, and then basically another squad rolls up, steamrolls you, and grabs all your shit. Unless you happen to get to the escape pod in time. It's a Tarkov-esque experience in a little bit of a more sci-fi package, but there's also some other differences here. There's a cool aesthetic, the game is pretty well optimized, please ignore the stuttery footage, that is from OBS, not from the game. And even though the only US server was on the other side of the country from me, I didn't have any lag problems. Dead Zone prides itself on having procedurally generated maps filled with traps, evil robots, and defenses that you have to navigate. And I've got to say that this actually felt pretty good. It eliminates the map memorization problems that a lot of extraction shooters already have. Judging by the menu system, there's a ton of cosmetics, perks, and weapons all to level up. I'm hoping that doesn't mean there's going to be a cash shop opening up at any time in the future, but I guess we'll see. If you're sick of Tarkov and all of its inconsistencies, maybe this is a new one for you to try out. Echo Point Nova was probably the best first-person shooter I played this round. It's a sci-fi flavored mobility shooter from the creators of Severed Steel. Now in Echo Point Nova, instead of being stuck inside of a small boxy level, this game's all about delivering fast action while making you look cool and moving around huge environments. You have your standard pistol, SMG, AR, shotgun, sniper, but they all handle well, and the game has pretty forgiving aiming. Once again, the emphasis is on mobility and exploration. There's a ton of options you get from pretty much right at the beginning, including this bitchin' hoverboard that would make Marty McFly jealous, a double jump, a wind power that you can blast into the floor and launch yourself upwards like a man cannon, and a grappling hook. There's tons of destructible environments on top of that. Any concrete wall can be knocked over with a swing of your sledgehammer. Powers, perks, and upgrades can all be enhanced with a leveling system, and exploring around to find the little bits and bobs and hats is part of the fun. There's even going to be some multiplayer co-op. If you're a fan of first-person shooting and whipping around levels at breakneck speed, this is definitely one to watch. Moving on to the strategy and RPG offerings from this round of Next Fest, I think some of the strongest offerings can be found here. There's also some of the strangest offerings. For example, Back to the Dawn is a furry prison sim with unlockable characters that all have different backstories. The demo lets you play through as a Fox reporter that gets framed for doing a report on factory pollution and has to break out of prison to stop the evil mayor's re-election. There's deep RPG mechanics here that track your little fox's physical and mental well-being, which have an effect on how effective you are. In addition to that, there's a layered turn-based JRPG fight system that's pretty difficult. Fighting is lethal and can lead to further complications for you down the line. This is more of a hardcore prison sim. Things like depression and mental state, hunger, reputation systems, and relationships all play into your survivability. And there's a lot to do and a lot of different ways to do it. You can befriend other prisoners, join gangs, do jobs for cash and reputation, gather and craft implements in order to try to escape the jail. Even if the furry aesthetic is not your thing, this is a deep RPG that deserves some attention. Three Kingdoms Xiaoyun is a wuxia-flavored ARPG. It's like Diablo, but you get a horse. It's hella fun to go full kung fu hustle on waves of bad guys, though. One big negative, unfortunately, is the frame rate is still all over the place. This seems to be a pretty early alpha, and optimization is not on the forefront just yet. However, there's pretty good graphics and production value. Tons of voice acting, even though it's in Chinese. It felt more like an epic kung fu movie. There's a crafting system, lots of loot, some cool-ass moves, and multiple weapon types, as well as an active blocking mechanic, and of course, that mounted combat has a lot going for it. Much of the game is going after big generals and beating the holy hell out of them with your crazy-looking moves, so it's definitely a clickfest, but pretty fun so far and promises a lot of depth. In Rogue Voltage, Earth has been pretty much destroyed in a catastrophic gravity anomaly. Survivors have learned to make do by harnessing the energy to make weird analog synthesizer weapons and defend themselves against all the crazy mutated monsters. So this is a roguelike game in a field of roguelikes, but some things set this one apart. You wire up all of these modules, kind of like an audio patch bay or some janky DJ equipment, but the modules themselves are temperamental and can fail or be affected by enemy attacks and effects. Manipulating the timeline to your advantage provides the best results, and dangerous gravitational storms make encounters even more unpredictable, so it's going to take a chess-like amount of strategy to wield your weapons and get results. However, I'm just kind of interested in seeing where this concept goes. There's not that many games out there where fighting your equipment is equally important as fighting the enemies. Broken Roads is probably my pick for the most anticipated RPG on this list. This is the most Aussie post-apocalyptic RPG I've ever seen. But you have deep character customization and choices matter with room for failure. That alone gives a lot of player agency, and I'm excited about that for sure. This complex moral compass karma system is central to the game's mechanics. It reflects your character's core philosophy based on your choices, and also can be influenced and changed by your decisions. So you're not just locked into a particular worldview, it can change and evolve over time as you play the game. There's also a punt skill, which allows you to take advantage on certain roles at the cost of punt points, sort of derived from tabletop RPGs like 5th edition. There's tactical turn-based combat, although we won't be seeing a lot of it in the demo. There's a few opportunities to take out your guns, but the focus is more on talking to people rather than putting holes in them. It's sort of more like a Disco Elysium novel type deal, with some dice rolls and some tactical RPG combat here and there. It does seem weird that there's unlimited bullets in a land such as this, so I'm wondering if this isn't supposed to be post-apocalyptic America? But there is still a beautiful hand-painted art style, a ton of voice acting, and a very crusty narrator.
Despite the many paths in front of us, we can only ever walk our own. What tale will your choices tell at the end of your journey down these broken roads?
This is definitely going to be one to watch for fans of classic CRPGs like Fallout 2, Knights of the Old Republic, or any of those old BioWare Infinity Engine games. Speaking of old school, this one is going older than old school. Islands of the Khalif is an 80s style retro RPG with an Arabian theme. You explore gorgeous pixel islands with step-based movement and you fight in real-time combat. This game is so old school that there's no mouse controls. You've got to change your options in a text file. But hey, there's stuff like this crazy giant squid that wants you to find its babies. The combat is fast and fluid, and there's nice graphics all the way down to the scanline details. This is definitely one to watch for fans of first-person blobbers or dungeon crawlers, where you have that step-based movement, or if you just like anything that looks like it's from the late 80s. Keeping in that old school vein, we have an actual roguelike. Now this is a game that's similar to Rogue, the old school dungeon crawler. This is Quasimorph. It's an actual turn-based roguelike with a sci-fi horror premise. You fight through hordes of mad mutants on various space colonies and outposts as a clone under the employ of a private military company. I love the aliens-inspired premise. There's a ton of weapons and items to play around with, a lot of different monsters and big explorable levels. In addition to this, you have a very detailed health system and just an overarching feeling of foreboding and dread all over a metal guitar soundtrack. Really, really cool if you want that old school feeling. Coming back towards the future, we have Hammerwatch II, which is a fantasy-flavored action RPG and sequel to the original pixel-blasting multiplayer original. Hammerwatch II, instead of being more of a Gauntlet clone, is now a fully-fledged Diablo-like ARPG. There's a customizable character creator, multiple classes, although the demo only lets you try out Wizard and Ranger, and a big pile of robust skill trees to upgrade your character as you see fit. The demo of Hammerwatch II seems to improve on the original in almost every aspect. In addition to having tons of secret walls and things to discover in the dungeons, there's a large open environment to explore as you see fit. There's a day and night cycle, there's weather, such as rainstorms, beautiful water and lighting, and there's a really awesome soundtrack. Look at these nice pixel locales, like this pirate cave with boat wrecks in it. It looks fantastic. In addition to that, you have crafting, including enchantment, cooking, potion making, a ton of Diablo-styled loot, all with different stats and advantages and disadvantages, and it looks like they're planning on workshop and mod support. The demo itself has several hours of content, so give this one a try. For those that missed the 16-bit era of console RPGs, we have Sea of Stars. This aims to recapture the spirit of the Chrono Triggers and Final Fantasy's past. It's simply a gorgeous game with an eye towards the past while still keeping some modern quality of life conveniences. The demo has you assisting pirates by doing this cleverly created puzzle dungeon. It's got beautiful pixel art that looks like the best of the SNES era and active turn-based combat where your inputs can help cause critical hits or additional effects based on your timing. There's tons of cutscenes and detailed animations in this isometric perspective and really well done character portraits as well. Overall, Sea of Stars is definitely one I've been looking for a while, ever since I backed the Kickstarter years ago, and I'm glad to see it shaping up into a full game finally. Then we have Remor, Infested Kingdom. It's an adorably pixelated grimdark strategy RPG set in a low fantasy world. Creepy infected creatures have invaded the countryside, so your job is simply to survive the village of Remor with some unlikely allies. You have strategy RPG trappings here. Any actions require movement points or action points to complete. The dialogue is pretty heavy, but it's fairly well written, and there's some complex RPG and combat systems that complement the light management mechanics. As you find more survivors, more options become available to you in your little hideaway, but don't feel like this game will be easy. It's challenging without being too punishing, but supplies are low, enemies are deadly, and your dudes will die. As for a more modern offering, we have Shadow Gambit, the Cursed Crew. Afia Monacato is a pirate with some brand new problems. She's been cursed, she's been run through with her own sword, and her arm is now a skeleton arm. So you take control of her in a real-time stealth strategy game to team up with Red Marley, the talking ghost ship, revive your undead crew, hunt down a legendary treasure, and take down an oppressive reign of inquisitors in a cursed island chain where death is not the end. Now, even though this game kind of smacks of a mobile port, it does have really beautiful presentation and fairly good voice acting, as well as nice portraits and designs. The controls are simplistic and intuitive. Most of it is tap and hold style stuff with a few hotkeys thrown in to make things easier on PC players. Save scumming is a huge part of the game itself. Being able to save and load the game with a touch of a button is highly encouraged throughout the demo's runtime. There's large levels that require moving and tilting the camera in order to properly strategize, and I love the little barks and voice lines that confirm your actions. I really like this Assassin's Creed-like affair of taking down guys with your powers and knives and hiding them in the various bushes and closets, or finding other creative ways to dispose of the bodies. There's unlocks and upgrades for your piratey powers and for the ship alike, as well as the crew, and when you revive the crew, you get this awesome animation of infusing them with soul energy and shooting a black pearl into their chests with a pistol. On top of that, there's a pirate monkey that wants banana cookies. So if I can't convince you to check this one out with a pirate monkey, you probably have a shrunken little heart. Point-and-click adventure games are here to stay, so we're going to start with the best of the best, Cosmic Wheel Sisterhood. This was a demo where you take on a role of a witch that's been exiled on a lonely asteroid for 200 years. The terms of your exile were a little contentious. Basically what happened is you told the future, you predicted the fall of your witch coven, and the leader deemed you dangerous. So you're bored, you've been sitting there for 200 years, you decide to cast a forbidden spell and summon a cosmic being to break out of your space prison. To do this, you must craft your own tarot deck of arcane symbols and powers, each based on elements and arcane imagery. Now this game was created by Deconstruct Team, who also did the phenomenal Gods Will Be Watching Choices Matter style game. While this game is more of a visual novel, it's still a compelling concept with beautiful pixel art and awesome designs. It's a very interesting idea to make your own tarot deck, especially since you design the cards yourself, even placing icons and elements and characters over detailed backgrounds of your choosing. You read the tarot in certain encounters to try to divine the cosmic secrets of your mysterious new friend, or to navigate some of the social situations that the game presents with you. The story and mechanics also pivot in some interesting ways in this hour-long demo, so it's well worth checking out for any adventure fans out there. Vern, the Shape of Fantasy is one of the few Next Fest entries I found that was built on the bones of a public domain property. So you take on the role of classic sci-fi author Jules Verne in an alternate universe, where he's wrecked at sea and has washed up on a desert island. You take control of Vern to solve puzzles as he stumbles into mysterious artifacts and messes with the flow of time itself. So you do some classic point and clicking and knot tying action, and this is accomplished equally well with the controller or with the mouse and keyboard. Now, Vern seems to be on an island where time has lost all meaning and artifacts from other timelines keep mysteriously washing up on shore. And while this doesn't seem to be a game based on one particular work, it's still a sci-fi adventure that point-and-clicker fans should look out for, as it contains a lot of interesting, really cool designs, and a lot of shout-outs to Vern's body of work.
Yes, made of steel.
Then we have Witherhome, which is a 4-player co-op adventure game. This is more of a horror game where you play as a cute, adorable little goblin mage, and you buddy up with up to 3 of your other friends in order to complete some dangerous missions in some dark environments. It has an adorable low poly art style with really well done animations. Your little goblins can be customized with nice little hats and hoods and backpacks. And then you get to step out into the world and take on a mercenary job for a big bag of gold, provided you come back alive, of course. Uh-oh.
I don't like that.
Yeah.
Gotta hide. Oh yeah, dog. If that's a big spider, I don't know if I'm into this very much. But let me see.
So the demo has one map, and it's definitely a big, spooky dungeon. And you're not alone in this big, spooky dungeon. There's a thing with a blade for a face that's going to try to cut you in half. So you don't really have any defenses as far as this goes, other than your goblin-y stature, where you can use it to hide behind things and try to avoid this creature while you complete your objectives and escape. This game does a pretty good job of building up the tension with environmental notes and spooky storytelling, and once you finally see that monster, you'll definitely have your adrenaline on edge. So give this one a spin if you have a few buddies. Oh shit, oh shit. It's getting me. Help, help. So finally we get to the weird stuff, and I'm not talking about just stuff like meme games or low-effort entries. This is stuff that I think is conceptually weird. So let's start out with the second game built upon a public domain IP, Ebenezer and the Invisible World. This is a Metroidvania where you play as a hot dead Ebenezer Scrooge post-Christmas carols, and you have to defeat evil spirits, greedy industrialists, and strike-breaking thugs with only your trusty cane and cadre of ghosts. So it has some beautiful artwork and animation, and a decent level of challenge without feeling too unfair. There's plenty of side quests, items to collect, and people to talk to, and Video Game London looks great, so maybe give it a spin if you're hungry for another Metroidvania. Then we have whatever Drift City Kings is. This is a sort of a life simulator that takes place in a near-future MS Paint Australia. You start out with a job interview at a soul-sucking corporation, then you wander around the city making friends and buying snacks, all the while secretly building on your goal to be the king of drift racing. The scrawly art style is very colorful and vibrant, somewhat reminiscent of Outrun or Vaporwave aesthetics. There's tons of weird people to talk to and locations to explore and a lot of funny dialogue, and the quest system is entirely handled via your phone like a Grand Theft Auto game. I did find myself wandering around a lot saying where the hell do I go, and the racing doesn't feel too great yet. It's a top-down arcade affair that feels somewhat unresponsive to control, but since this is an early demo, the dev still has a lot of opportunity to tune the controls and handling of the drift cars and make that portion of the game more satisfying to play. Shirime 2, the Genesis of Butt Eye. Now, I was surprised as everyone else that there was a Shirime 1. Basically, this is the story. You're some kind of detective, your sister is missing, and the rumors of a legendary yokai that causes blindness and a painful curse of death surrounds her disappearance. So what we have here is a cheap and silly RE4 clone game. It's full of goofy butt puns, and the only way to really harm these creatures is to shoot them in the weak spot to kill them. Guess where that is? The gunplay and interface feels kinda bad, but the game itself doesn't look too terrible. It's got decent production value here for a budget title, and those familiar with Resis will feel right at home. It's great if you want to laugh and maybe be a little spooked, but mostly laugh. Finally, we have Haylee Feet Poser. This isn't really a game, but it somehow ended up in the game queue. Who is this for? It's a Quentin Tarantino fantasy project, I guess. All you do is pose a pair of disembodied feet. That is it. You can change around a lot of the feet settings as well as the background, but there's not really any gameplay here. If you ever have the need to rub one out to disembodied She-Hulk feet in front of the Mona Lisa, I guess this is the visual aid for you. So that wraps it up for this round of Steam Next Fest demos. If you found some good ones or tried any of these out yourself, let me know what you think in the comments. And as always, if you'd like to support our channel, please take a second to click that subscribe button, like the video, drop a little comment, you know, do the stuff the algorithm likes. If you want to support us with more than just clicks and kind words, then you can take a look at our Ko-Fi page if you want to just drop a tip, or you can also subscribe to us on our brand new Patreon, or become a channel member. Members get access to things like early videos, polls, exclusive posts, and special Discord roles. We also say your name in the credits. So hey, if you want to give us your patronage, take a look at that link in the description. Once again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next Two-Headed Hero.